I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. Welcome to another Mail Call Mondays, and let's get to the questions. First question this week comes from Jason, and Jason asked, does rain have a huge impact on ballistics? I've heard shooters say that a supersonic projectile will not actually touch raindrops since the air is compressed in front of it. I think shooting in the rain does affect ballistics since the bullet is traveling through water, raindrops, regardless of speed. I have no way of proving either point of view, but I do know my accuracy drops off because I'm shooting in the rain. Well, Jason, I think your last point kind of hits the nail on the head. A lot of shooters have problems shooting in the rain because they're shooting in the rain. It's less comfortable. You've got other things to worry about. You got the rain running down your back, dripping off your iPro, fogging up your scope, getting into your ammunition. Sometimes rain can cause pressure issues in the gun if you're running the ragged edge of pressure to begin with. And so all these factors kind of meld together to create a less comfortable shooting environment and can cause some deviation downrange in the rain. I think less of it has to do with the actual interaction between the bullet and the raindrops. From my own experiences observing shooting in the rain, I have not noticed any credible deviation in my trajectory because of the rain. Usually I account it to those other factors that I just mentioned, me being less comfortable in the rain. So I haven't consistently seen, oh, the bullet is going to the left or the bullet's going to the right or it's up or down or I'm 3 mils off in the rain, you know, that kind of thing. I've done a lot of research into it, and the best that I can find is that as the bullet is moving through the air in a supersonic speed, it's pushing a bow wave in front of the bullet, and that air is actually causing the raindrops never to actually come in contact with the bullet itself. Now, when you really start to think about this, you would think, well, a raindrop still has mass. The mass would cause that air to compress more between the bullet and the raindrop, and that could cause a slight deviation, just a matter of fractions of a degrees to one way or the other. Well, it's entirely possible, and the more I read into that, the more I started to see calculations in the difference between the mass of the raindrop and the mass of the bullet. And obviously raindrops come in different sizes, bullets come in different sizes, but when you calculate not only the mass but the momentum, because the speed of the bullet is moving is considerably greater than the speed that raindrop is falling. When you calculate the difference in momentum, you run into that the bullet has about 6,000 times more momentum than the raindrop falling. Now, I haven't actually calculated the math. I'm going on faith that the individual who I was reading was doing the correct calculations. Anyway, this 6,000 times difference in the mass between the bullet in the momentum between the bullet and the raindrop means that even if the raindrop was able to impart all of its momentum onto the bullet, it would have a very, very marginal deviation on the trajectory of the bullet. Now, take into account how fast that bullet is moving and the limited amount of time that the raindrop has to actually impart all of its momentum onto the bullet. And you realize that it's very, very unlikely that the raindrop is going to be able to impart enough change in the bullet to cause a measurable change downrange on the target. Because realize that that change has to be mixed in with all the other environmental factors that we have to deal with. The changes in temperature, the standard deviation of the cartridges, the difference in weight in the bullets, your ability to calculate wind drift, your ability to hold the rifle on the target. So all of these factors have to be perfect before you would even be able to actually observe this deviation of the bullet. So what I believe is any actual deviation that a raindrop would cause gets lost in the noise. And then it becomes something not to worry about because there's really no way for us to calculate how many raindrops the bullet may come in contact with on its way downrange. Could it be 1? Could it be 20? Could it be 100? That I have no idea, and again, no real way to calculate because you can't sit there and determine what the rate of rainfall is before you pull the trigger. That's just not realistic. So even if we had a measurable effect and we had a formula that we could utilize to predict the measurable effect, there's no practical way to apply that formula in the field. It's not like wind where you can just hold a wind meter up and say, hey, there you go. Because again, using wind as an example, you can hold a meter up and see exactly what the wind is doing. And as soon as you get down behind the rifle and you go to pull the trigger, that wind can change and you can have a significant deviation downrange. So my answer to rain is don't worry about it. Use the exact same information that you would use shooting in the rain as you would shooting on a clear day with, again, the same environmental factors, the same pressure, the same temperature. So you want to check that DA and make sure that you're using the correct density altitude. I think that's another thing that a lot of guys may get tied up in is that rain may come in and they may forget to check their environmental factors again before they send that bullet down range, because very often when a storm rolls in, you have changes in temperature and pressure, and that can affect your shot downrange. But I think most of it comes down to shooters being uncomfortable shooting in the rain. So the best way to fix that is get out and shoot in the rain. Get more comfortable shooting in the rain, have confidence in your gear, have confidence in your equipment, make sure that your load works well when it's got water on it. So those factors I think are more important than what a raindrop actually does to the bullet. But I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it, especially if you're one of these guys that can do the physics and do the math for shooting in the rain. Please let me know what you have to say down below. And shooters, just let me know what your experience is shooting in the rain. I'd love to hear it. Our next question comes from Hans. And Hans sent this question to me in a private message, but I also thought it might be something good to answer here on Mail Call Mondays. They said, I know Really Right Stuff tripods are top-notch products. How would you rate them for long-range shooting, 1 kilometer and beyond, versus prone position and a shooting bench or bipod, specifically shooting from a wheelchair seated? Not every range has a shooting bench, and when it does, height is often not optimal for my chair to find an optimal position. A good tripod would overcome this problem, but is it stable enough? I would place a tray or beanbag so in my lap so that I could position my elbows in normal fashion for added stability. Thanks for your advice. Big fan. Well, Hans, as I answered in the private message, the Really Right Stuff tripod, I believe from your description of the position that you would use, where you have the tripod set in a optimal height for your sitting position, and you'll use some kind of solid rear support across your lap, I believe that is definitely going to be a solid enough position to be able to shoot at 1,000 yards with. Now, it won't be as solid as a prone position. Prone is the gold standard for solid shooting positions. That's why we zero our rifles from prone. That's why we do anything that we require the absolute razor's edge precision from the prone position. I can actually shoot prone from a bipod and a rear bag better than I can shoot from a machine rest on the bench. That may be partly because I don't practice from a machine wrench on the bench, but I've just kind of noticed that for me. I am better shooting from the prone than I am shooting from a bench rest position. Anytime you start to bring the rifle up from that ground position and you start to add height, then you start to lose stability. But the Really Right Stuff tripod specifically is probably the highest quality tripod that I have shot off of, and if anything has the ability to solve your problem, that tripod is going to do it. It's extremely stable. It's going to keep the front end of your rifle anchored right where you put it. The degree of accuracy that you can gain is going to be dependent upon how solid you can get that rear buttstock in your lap or on your improvised bench across your chair. But I really think you're on the right path. I think that is going to help you to get out and get shooting regardless of what kind of benches there are at the range. And also it'll help you if you're able to get out into more field shooting environments in your country, then now you don't have to worry about, is there going to be a bench there that I can use? You can go out wherever you're at and set that up. I also think the tripods can be a great help for disabled hunters that are going to be out in the field. Setting up one of these tripods will really be able to let you extend your range that you can ethically engage an animal at. So they're really great things. Now, the Really Right Stuff tripod specifically, we're wrapping up the review on that, and is an excellent piece of gear. It is expensive, but like anything in our shooting industry, if you're going for the top-notch equipment, it is expensive. There is a price to pay. But in this instance, I definitely think you are getting value for your money when you see how stable these tripods can be. So definitely give it a try, and I would love to see some pictures or some video of you shooting with that setup. I'd love to share them with our audience. And our next question comes from Juan. And Juan asks, Coriolis, how much is it going to affect the trajectory, and how can I compensate for it? And then secondly, recently got a mil-spec ACI. I was using a trigonometry scale with cosines corresponding to angles of other equipment, etc. The new device only shows angle cosine on both sides. Not sure which one to use when aiming up or low. Thanks for sharing. Well, Juan, first of all, on your question on Coriolis, Coriolis, for those of you guys that don't know, is the difference in trajectory of the bullet based upon the rotation of the Earth. And Coriolis will change depending upon where you're located at on the Earth, and it will change based upon your bearing to target. So you need to take those factors, and those need to be plugged into a ballistic calculator, and it will alter your firing solution based upon those factors. You could calculate it by paper, I'm sure. I'm not sure how long it would take you, but if you are going to factor Coriolis into your shooting solution, you really need to do it with a ballistic calculator. You don't have to go use a Kestrel or anything like that. You can get smartphone ballistic calculators that will factor Coriolis in for you. However, I will tell you that 90% of the time Coriolis is turned off in my devices. I don't mess with it. I don't plug it in. I find that my ability to call wind will cause a greater deviation in my firing solution than factoring Coriolis in. It's just really not necessary. Even if I was going for a world record bench rest group, I wouldn't factor in Coriolis because my sighters are going to factor out any very tiny deviation that Coriolis would have in my firing solution. Where Coriolis does come in is in extreme long range shooting. If you're shooting out 2 miles, 3 miles, etc., and you need to be able to get a first round hit, that's where you need to start plugging in Coriolis. And again, grab a ballistic calculator. You're going to need it anyway for that distance shooting, and you can plug it in there. Coriolis really comes into effect when you're shooting mortars and artillery. Since the extended range and the arcs that those are shooting, they need to calculate Coriolis to make sure that they're getting rounds on target. But for 1,000 yards and in, you can pretty much disregard Coriolis and spend more time worrying about getting your wind call down. And then for your second part of your question regarding an ACI, an angle cosine indicator, on your ACI, I'm not really sure which version you're using. I didn't have a chance to look up the specific ACI that you referenced here, but they will have one of two outputs on them. They will either tell you what the degrees you're pointing up or down, or they will give you a cosine up or down. Now, up or down doesn't matter. It just matters what the angle is. So if, for instance, your angle cosine indicator says that your muzzle is at a 30-degree angle, then you would take that 30 degrees, you would either plug it directly into your ballistic calculator so it can do the math, or you would pull out a cosine table and see that 30 degrees says it's point such and such for your cosine. You'd then take the cosine and you would multiply that by the straight line distance to the target. So if you take a laser rangefinder, aim it at your target, and laser the target, then that reading, the raw reading that the laser rangefinder gives you, you will multiply that by the cosine, and that will give you your ballistic distance to target, your flat line distance to the target. You'll then take that flat line distance and use that to calculate your dope, your elevation that you need to engage the target. Now, if your ACI outputs a cosine, it's even easier because you just take that point, whatever the ACI tells you, multiply that by the distance that you lased or you milled, etc., and then use that to calculate your dope. So it's very easy. Now, the angle up or angle down doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if it's 30 degrees up or if it's 30 degrees down, as long as you have the correct angle or the correct cosine. And the reason is because the bullet doesn't care if it's being fired up at an angle or being fired down at an angle. All it cares about is the distance that gravity is pulling on the bullet. And that's what we're trying to calculate. We're trying to calculate the base of that triangle. So we don't care which side of the triangle that we're on. If we're on the low side of the triangle or if we're on the high side of the triangle, we just need to know the distance across the base of that triangle. So I hope that clarifies that for you and gives you a little bit better insight on that. And our last question comes from Philip, and Philip asks, what criteria do you most think about when choosing a competition outside of the professionally hosted ones? Potential to place high, a learning environment, or proximity to home, or all of the above? Well, Philip, right now at this point in my career, all I worry about is where I'm going to have the most fun. If position to place high was, or possibility to place high was my primary concern, then I probably would not shoot a whole lot of matches, because I'm going to tell you right now, my schedule does not allow me to get out and train to the degree that I need to consistently place high in these matches. You'll see, for instance, in Guardian, I placed about middle of the pack, and that's kind of normal for me right now, because when it's time for me to shoot a match, I'm just grabbing something out of the safe, grabbing ammo to shoot it and go. I'm not doing a train up for the match. I'm not really concentrating on it. I'm not doing the information or data gathering that I really need to do to prevail in a match. Really, where I place in the match is the farthest from my mind. It's really how much I'm going to enjoy it. I look for interesting matches, places where they're going to throw strange stages at you, things that require me to expand my shooting horizons. I like interesting shooting problems that I have to get onto. I'm not so much worried about the tactical aspect of it anymore. I think I've pretty much got that covered over the expanse of my career. Now I'm looking for fun shooting problems, things that cause me to really have to work on new positions or new abilities. So there's that. And then the big one is the attitude of the match director that is putting it on, and the attitude of the owner at the facility. Those are two big ones. I tend to associate myself with people who have a passion for the sport and are fun to be around. And so that's a lot of what goes into how I choose what matches I go to. And finally, I have really gotten to the point where I prefer to go shoot low stress matches that aren't super competitive, because it's more like just going out and shooting with a group of friends than it is a competition. And that really appeals to me because I like the social aspect of shooting. I'm not so much out there to try to make sure that I take the highest prize off the prize table or rake in the most so that I can fund my shooting budget or any of that stuff. I'm just worried about going out and having fun, meeting other shooters, talking to you guys, because I absolutely love it when you come up to me at the different matches and tell me you watch the show and tell me your story about shooting. I absolutely get the greatest kick out of that. So that's really more what I'm looking at, the interaction with the shooting community versus just the competitive nature of shooting. As far as distance to home, obviously if a match is closer here, a couple hours drive, then it's a good thing for me. But I don't have a problem with driving across country to shoot a match. My biggest thing here over the last about year and a half has been trying to get things to work in with my work schedule. I've got a lot of problems coordinating the time off that I need both to travel and to shoot a match. So hopefully that will change a little bit. I'll be able to shoot a few more matches next year, but I've had some things going on this year that have required me to devote some more of the time that I would normally use to shoot matches. So that's my basic criteria on how I choose to shoot matches. So how do you guys pick your matches? What are you looking for? Are you looking for a big prize table? Or are you looking for beautiful scenery? Or are you looking for something close to home? I'd really like to know what criteria you're using to pick your matches. So go ahead and leave that down in the comments section below. As far as that goes, that is all for this Mail Call Mondays. This has been kind of a convoluted Mail Call Mondays, but I apologize for that. Again, we're trying to get back on track. We're trying to get this out to you this Monday so we can get on to getting some more of our review videos done. We did just recently get the new US Optics B17 scope in. I am really anxious to get this guy mounted up and get it out and do some shooting. We had some bad luck with our LR17 and we had some problems with that, so I'm really anxious to see how the B17 stacks up and really anxious to play with the new turret. If you want to know more about the B17, make sure you check out our SHOT Show video when we went over and talked to US Optics about some of the features on the scope, and look for it once we get it mounted up to be in some future videos. If you guys have any questions or comments or something that you'd like included in Mail Call Mondays, leave it in the comments section below or send it to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, get out and shoot.